And I'll take a moment to do our welcome to the virtual Board of Education meeting. Attending a virtual meeting may be a new experience for some, so please allow me to take a moment to review some procedures that will allow everyone to participate. When speaking, please state your name, address, and topic before beginning your comments. Some meeting participants are joining by telephone and cannot see the face or name of the speaker as shown on the computer screen. The public participation at board meetings as per bylaw 0167.3 applies to this virtual meeting as well. Please mute your phone or computer microphone to prevent feedback and background noise during times when you are not speaking. There is a chat box found in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. The chat box may be used to pose a question. The name or telephone number of the person posting the chat comment will appear on the screen. The board president will read the question aloud during the appropriate section of the meeting for the guests calling in by telephone. This meeting does have an opportunity for public comment under number 9 on the agenda. If you would like to register to make comments during this meeting, please type your name, address, and topic in the chat box at this time. All Board of Education votes will be conducted through a roll call vote. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording does include anything that is typed into the chat box. And Madam President, it is all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Rapper. We will come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Petke, if you could call roll, please.
Mr. Seeger?
Here.
Mr. Forbes?
Here.
Mr. Holman?
Here.
Mr. Scheller? Mrs. Petke here. Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mrs. Johnson?
Here.
I am here as well. Thank you. Dr. Rapper, can you verify publication of meeting, please?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. All right. First presentation. Dr. Rapper, you have the Q12 Survey Strategies and the next steps for us.
Yes, so this was our third year doing the Q12 Staff Engagement Survey. It ended on Friday, lucky Friday the 13th, this past Friday. So we have the overall tabulation, which happens quite quickly from Gallup. So this PDF represents kind of an overall summary of all employee groups. So we had about the same rate of participation as last year, and the results look fairly similar to last year. The area with the greatest gain was the Q3, opportunity to do best. So at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. So it was nice to see some growth in that particular area. And then the other one that seems to be growing is the Q12, Learn and Grow. This last year, I've had opportunities at work to learn and grow. So we'll continue to monitor those areas, and this information will be shared with the Trust Action team, led by, co-chaired by the principals, and they will set the course for what area do they want to focus on and how to make some gains before the survey is completed about this time next year. So I don't know if anyone has any particular questions at this high-level view. right. Then I will stop sharing and give you a chance to take a look at Mr. McGregor today.
All right, thank you, Dr. Apper. Mr. McGregor, you are on next.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me again. It's always nice to be back with the group. I'm going to share my screen and kind of walk through a couple documents. And I think some of you might have seen them already in the Finance Committee meeting. And this first document, this is what Carmen and Dr. Opper and myself have been using, kind of tracking the funds, going through all of our different allowances and contingencies. And so what we have here in the current column is this was as of 11/4, as you can see the date on the top. These were the actual amounts remaining in those different buckets of money throughout the $12 million referendum fund. And this goes through all the allowances and contingencies that we were carrying, along with some of the owner, I guess we'll call them owner held, but a lot of the FF&E funds. I know we did make a decision early on that we were going to pull the FF&E funds out of the interest earnings and capitalize on the referendum fund for project costs. But what we are currently showing, we have a couple items that we're still projecting dollars for. Mainly a few door items, a few outstanding bills that we're waiting to come in the door, door and HVAC, excuse me. And then a few bills that are just kind of lingering out there. So with those few items that I'm currently projecting, I'm showing a total remaining balance on the $12 million referendum of $780,470.93. So I know I've been kind of holding off on saying these words, but I think we can go around and praise the district and the staff for what they have done and say we are under budget. So with that, we also have some additional projects we have been looking at and tracking over the course of the overall referendum. So what we have here, and I'll zoom in a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see. This is what we had put together as our add alternate list. And this add alternate list is just a number of items that have been compiled over the course of the last year and a half on items that have come up that, hey, if we have money left over, let's look at these projects. And over the past couple months, Dr. Opper and her staff has really, as well as the board, has really prioritized where we feel this money is best spent. And right now our thought process is still the paving projects around the high school. So those three items, and we had them broke out, the front loop, the back loop, and then the west parking lot. We had those kind of identified as the key ticket items. We did include some Hoffman management time on here for the paving project, just to coordinate the contractors through the course of the summer of 21 to complete that project. But we also do have a number of other items that are on the list as well, which I'm sure you've all seen. This existing switch replacement, this is a new one that Dr. Opper and I have discussed today that we wanted to make sure we include on the list. Dr. Opper, I'm not sure if you want to mention anything about that at this time.
Just that there are a number of switches as well as access points that are a critical part of our infrastructure, particularly now where there's so much emphasis on virtual instruction and accessibility for staff and students, that having a sound IT infrastructure has become incredibly important, even more important than even a year ago. And we do have some questionable equipment that really does need to be replaced. So these were things that I was talking with Mr. Kobrubius about, and it pushed things to the top. You'll notice there are a lot of nice to have things on this list, but the things we put at the top are the kinds of things that central really to our mission in the focus of access to our community as well as instructional priorities.
Okay, so down at the bottom of this sheet, what I kind of, over the last 10 minutes now, I just kind of compiled some notes here as to, we had the $780,000 that I mentioned remaining referendum funds. Talking with Carmen today, she is currently projecting about $38,700 remaining in interest earning left to spend, or in that pot of money. Doesn't need to be spent, but that leaves a total remaining of just under 820,000, 819,178. So the paving project that we have noted above, including the Hoffman management time, we have a total project cost of $677,215. I would like to hold 100,000. I know that seems like a lot, but we're really not quite sure what we were going to get into once we start digging into the existing parking lot, the existing driveways, and any poor soils that we may encounter. As a comparison, we spent approximately $24,000 at the Manoa Elementary School when we repaved that site. In dealing with poor soils. So we didn't spend a lot of money over there, but we did definitely spend some. So I do want to make sure that we carry a contingency forward into that project to make sure we don't spend every dime or allocate all of the money just now until this project is complete, if approved by the board. But with that said, so if we carry the $100,000 contingency in the paving project itself, we are still showing a projected balance of just under $42,000 remaining once completed, and that would be with thinking or assuming that all of the contingency dollars were spent. So really, big kudos to Dr. Opper, Carmen, their staff, and the board for really holding on to these funds, making some tough decisions early on, because this is a great place to be in. It's a great place for the district to be able to start and tag off some of these additional projects, these additional needs around the schools. What questions does anybody have?
I think it's probably important to note that all of these items were in the 20-year projected list of items needing attention. When we started, they just didn't meet the $12 million cut at the time, given all the other needs that we had. But to make it clear, in case anybody's wondering, do these qualify for the referendum? They do. Had we done the $20 million referendum, all of these items would have been taken care of. This is part of where we had to scale back, and now this provides an opportunity to incorporate some projects back into the game plan that we had to exclude in order to stay within our budget.
Russ Johnson here. Some of these smaller projects could be used with further buildings and grounds, or budget money that's for buildings and grounds in years to come on the smaller dollar values, and would fit in pretty nice, I would think, because we shouldn't have as much fixing to do or putting out fires as we have in the past.
We may be able to pick up a couple of them as well. Once those large projects are done, if the board decides to proceed with the paving project, as will be discussed at Buildings and Grounds tomorrow night, there may be an opportunity to pick up a few small projects at the end as well.
Yep.
Does the paving project include all new curb and gutter, or is it just the black top work, or what?
It is just the paving and the base underneath. Yep, it's just the paving, the blacktop paving, striping, and the base course that is associated with that. Prior to finishing up our site work, we did go around the site and fix the really bad areas of curb and gutter. We did not fix all of them because we definitely wanted to be conservative with the dollars we were spending at that time. But we did fix a lot. I know there was a lot of them along the north side of the high school, and both entrance drives that we did repair because they were kind of crumbling and falling apart. There are maybe another 20, 35 feet that we could potentially look at as an option as well, but that is not included in that number right now. Good question.
Yeah. I'm just thinking if we're going to do the paving, we should fix, if there is 25, 30 feet, I wonder if we should fix that too. I understand that's extra, but.
It's worth it getting a price to look at it.
Do we have any idea what 25 or 30 feet of curbing would cost? Just a ballpark
You're
figure.
probably going to be looking at, bear with me 1 second. My phone doesn't want to open up. You're probably going to be looking anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 in that range. So not a huge ticket value, but a lot of them that we corrected this summer or this late summer, early fall was areas where there was definite drainage concerns, where we had water running to the curb where it wasn't, the curb really wasn't accepting the water, whether it was heaved up or low or cracked. The vast majority of those have been taken care of. There are a few areas I know that are still out there that the actual face of the curb may be cracked, but it wasn't. I guess we'd put that more on like the 5-year plan as opposed to the immediate needs that we did address. But if we wanted to take a walk around prior to doing this paving project and select some more sections of curb, we definitely could do that.
I'm kind of thinking like Luke, as long as we're doing all the blacktop and that, we might as well fix the curbs up as well. I haven't looked at them personally, but I know that bad curbs could also be a safety hazard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that may be something we could discuss tomorrow night at our Buildings and Grounds meeting.
Mhm.
Any other
Thank you, Matt.
questions on
was
this
helpful.
project or anything referendum related? Okay. Well, like I mentioned, we're still working through. I know I had spoke with Dr. Opper today, and we're working through some heating and ventilating items still as we're getting more into the heating season. Really, definitely into the heating season, and working through those with the contractors and making sure that they're getting on site in a timely manner as well, along with abiding by the school's guidelines for COVID safety with staff and students. So we're monitoring that going forward, and we're getting everybody to get all of their contracted work wrapped up. And there has been a few I would say, warranty calls that we have addressed as well, and that's going to be an ongoing basis through the course of the next year as well. If you don't have anything else, I will stop sharing and let you finish up with your board meeting. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you again this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Have a good evening.
You as well. All right, announcements, contributions to the district. We received the following donations. In Faith Community Foundation, in memory of Tammy Kemp, $500 awarded to the 2020 Heart of Gold recipient, and $500 to be awarded to the 2021 Heart of Gold recipient to their projects of recipient's choice. Also, the Manawa Athletic Booster Club Incorporated donated $1,281.12 for a coach bus rental for the football team. So thank you very much for those generous donations to the district. Consent agenda. Would any member like any item removed from the consent agenda to be dealt with separately? Okay, we will then vote by general consent. And hearing no dissent, the consent agenda carries. Public comments. I do not see anyone logged into the chat box to make any public comments. Correspondence, there was none this month. Board recognition. We have an outstanding athlete contribution. Mr. Wolfgram, if you'd like to give us information.
Absolutely. We had a banner year with Katie Bushke this year. She had outstanding contributions to the girls varsity volleyball team. As you can see from the agenda, she was voted senior team MVP. She was unanimous first team all conference, assist leader, co-captain, and CWC North Player of the Year, and 1,000 varsity assists. Now, to my knowledge, I can confirm this with Dawn Millard, that I don't think we've ever had anybody reach the 1,000 mark as far as varsity assists. So, woot woot, we got Wolf history going on here this year. Congratulations, Katie. And I would also say that the way she represents her team and her school is above reproach. She carries herself with dignity and respect on and off the court. So we're very lucky to have her. So congratulations, Katie.
And we will
Congratulations, Katie.
Thank you.
I
I just want to say a huge thank you to, what? Sorry. I just want to thank everyone for all the support over the years, and I have so much gratitude for everyone who made it possible for us to play this season, given the circumstances. So just thank you guys.
Congratulations, Katie, and you'll be getting a board certificate. We'll send that up to Mr. Wolfgram to present you at his earliest opportunity.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Katie. We hope to get you some additional signification, possibly. We may have to look at getting some a new leaderboard in the athletic department for those students with 1,000 varsity assists. It's a team of one right now. So congratulations again.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
All right.
Congratulations, Katie. All right, Manawa Elementary School Playground Enhancement Volunteer Phase 1, recognizing Miss U. Miss Brower, if you could talk about that, please.
Sure. We are in the very early stages of enhancing our playground. I can honestly say with the first day that I walked, I never really paid attention prior to this year of the playground because that wasn't kind of in my realm of my job. So this year when I walked out this summer, I was just sad. It's just a sad playground right now. It's old. And with the new blacktop, there wasn't much out there for kids to do. So What we did during the summer, Luann has been my right-hand lady with this, and she's been pushing me to get as much done as possible. We've gotten 2 new basketball hoops that the kids have got some time to use this fall, and we started painting. What I found out too when I started over the summer with the principalship was that we had all kinds of stencils for games for the blacktop. They were just sitting, I think they were upstairs in the mezzanine. So we pulled those down, bought a bunch of, I had a couple people that got Thrivent grants so we could purchase some paint, and Luann and I during the summer started painting. We didn't get as much done as we wanted to, but COVID did not help us, and neither did the weather. Whenever we had time to do it, it was rainy or very windy. So we got as much done as we could, but she was a huge help to me.
So Danny, what are the next steps in the playground? What can the community expect to see in the future?
Sure. So what we're doing right now, I think we're putting away our paint at the moment because it's going to be too cold to finish painting. So we have a lot more things to paint on the blacktop. But as we wait for that, right now I have one vendor that has given me a mock-up of some ideas of what he would do for the playground. I have another one that's working on it, so we can take a look at the different options that we have. Once we get those, some of the staff and maybe some students, maybe we'll lean on our student council, give us some ideas for the playground. We'll make some choices on what we want, and then we're gonna start fundraising. PTO has agreed to help us. The trick that we have right now is a lot of our fundraising options that we've done in the past, we can't do because of COVID. And because right now, well, because of COVID, our families don't have a whole lot of funds just laying around that they can donate. Even some of our businesses that have been so great in the past are struggling a little bit more. So we're really looking for fundraising ideas that don't add to anybody's checkbook. We might just get a kickback from some purchases that they've already done. So we're waiting on those mock-ups for the playground so we can make some choices, and then we're going to really look at our options for fundraising and start kicking off the fundraisers. What we thought would be very important is that the community and the kids and the staff could see exactly what they're fundraising for. There's nothing worse than somebody asking you for money, but you don't really know what it's going for. So I've talked to both vendors, and they would make us some posters that would say specifically what we're looking for and what it costs. So we're very transparent with what we're doing. The goal is that we are going to make a playground area that is for the community as well as the school. We're looking at putting in some picnic tables so that we could use it for picnics, we could use it for outdoor classrooms, and then making sure that we have a lot of equipment that are for all of the grades, not just one or two, the things that kids right now really seem to enjoy. A lot of climbing things, because that's what they do when they're outside. They run and climb. So that's what we're working on. Would love to get a couple more basketball hoops, but we'll see what we can do.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Brower, and thank you to Ms. Yu for her contribution. Next up, we have the Veterans Day Virtual Commemoration Program, Jen Krieger and Austin Rowan. Mr. Wolfgram, if you would like to talk about that, please.
Absolutely. I tell you, when we came back into school and we knew that we were going to try to have some sense of normalcy for our kids and for our community, the bar was raised as far as what our staff was going to attempt to do. We knew that the traditional Veterans Day ceremony was something that we didn't want a year to go by, because we know in this community, we know in our staff, and we know in our students that we hold this ceremony in very high regard, as well as our veterans. So I implored with the best of my staff to see what they could do, and they rose to the challenge. And two examples of this are in Jen Krieger and Austin Rowan. Jen Krieger almost single-handedly spearheaded the project. She not only created the graphics for the posters, as she does every year, but she also reached out to the veterans in the community to see if they might be interested in doing an interview project with some of our students. The amount of time that she took in editing the final project was countless numbers of hours. And to match that, Mr. Rowan ended up sequencing all of our kids in the band and in the choir. Now I'm going to let him probably tell you a little bit about it, but right when I was still teaching music, the ability to do multi-track layering and to try to line it up was just in its infancy. And we're very, very fortunate in this community to have such dedicated and talented special people on our staff, those in Austin Rowan and Jen Krieger. I can't thank them from the bottom of my heart enough. And if you didn't get a chance to see it, it's still on the webpage on our YouTube channel. You need to watch this. It was very touching, and the collaboration that my staff put together to make this happen for the community was unbelievable. So to Jen and Austin, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, as well as this community does.
Absolutely. Austin or Jen, would you like to speak?
Sure, I'd love to. Very briefly, of course, and probably waiting on Jen. She was probably waiting for me. Thank you, Mr. Wolfram, for the kind words. I think that Jen is a treasured and a treasured gift, and she's helped me in more than one occasion. And so for her to spearhead this, it's well within her abilities that are far beyond mine in some capacities. So fantastic job, Jen. Just a real quick synopsis of what went into the creation of the project on my end. We instilled a software called Soundtrap, which is a subscription-based program that we use online. And in a short sense, an MP3 is a digital file of a song. And so I take an MP3 and I upload the MP3 to an assignment on Soundtrap. And from there, I disperse it via Google Classroom to all my students. We rehearse every day in class, even though we're synchronous and A day, B day. And so students at home would follow along with PDFs of their music and continue learning, and the students in person were performing with their bell covers and masks on. And so we went through the process to learn the music, clean up the music in the best of our abilities. And then we sent when the kids were at home for the 2-week portion, their assignment was to use this Soundtrap program to create a new track, and they would use the microphone on their laptops, and they would put earbuds in to listen to the MP3, which I uploaded. So then they would play along with their recording. They would hear it here, but the microphone would only pick up their instrument. After they were done, it would get submitted to me. I received all the submissions for 7th grade through 12th grade, which is approximately 68. And then the choral ones as well. From each of those, I opened every file and exported them into a new MP3. Took all those 68 files, it was a little less than that, we were able to group some together, and then put them into another software in which I lined everything up and trimmed out all the white noise and space, something along those lines, rather than hearing in the background. Edited that a little bit, and snap of the fingers, about 5-6 hours later, we had a 2.5-minute piece of music. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's at about the 43-minute mark in the program. It really came together quite nice. We were able to balance things quite well, and I'd be hard pressed to guess that it was separate performances, and not to boast on my abilities, but the available software and the work ethic behind the kids to do the best that they could for something like this.
Austin should boast, though, because that is not easy to do. Doing that editing is hard. I've taught it in the past, so that is hard. I want to thank Dan again for his praise, but this was actually his idea to interview veterans, and he said the idea, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Let's go for it. So I just kind of took over, and like I like to do a lot of times, I guess. And the kids were amazing. A lot of the 6th graders did an awesome job of interviewing veterans. when we had 2 community members come in and I interviewed them. So I was so pleased that we could pull this all together and be able to do something virtually, and since we couldn't get together in person. So thank you.
Thanks to both of you, and I will share the wealth that Melly and I were actually talking about that, and I think she was the one that planted the seed about interviewing the veterans. So it was a collaboration both for administration and for staff. I really enjoyed you in those interviews, and the Star Spangled Banner that you had with our alumni. That was really cool. So that was a great way to kick off the program, Jen. Thank you very much.
I think the only other thing I'd add is what an amazing tribute it is to our local veterans, and to be able to have Jen capture that story, that piece of history, for our learners today to reflect on the sacrifices and the joys that come from military service, but also for that to be a future learning tool. You know, we lose veterans every day. We talk about that across our country, and the ability to capture those stories so that we have those for the future, I think is just phenomenal. So I couldn't be more proud. It brought tears to my eyes when I watched the program. It was just beautifully done.
Thank you to everybody for the contributions. It was indeed a fantastic program, and it's fantastic that it's out there so that not only can the community see it, but those that were interviewed can also share it with their families as well. So again, thank you, everyone. Item D, WASB member recognition. That would be myself and Mr. Scheller. I don't know, Mr. Scheller, if you'd like to talk a little bit about the things that you've done to get recognition from WASB.
I don't know. Starting off, I didn't know you could even get any awards by being on the school board, but that was kind of nice. But I just volunteered to be a delegate. I kind of like doing that kind of thing because I don't know, you learn more about what's going on in general, and then you learn about by other school board people. You kind of learn how other school boards do things. You know, try to sometimes just be quiet and listen. You can learn a lot about what other people are doing. So, but that's it. Just get a little involved. It's about all in a month, so I guess we're getting awards. So thank you very much.
All right, indeed. District Administrators Report, Dr. Apper.
Well, I do believe both our president and treasurer are a little humble in acknowledging the recognition. The WASB annually accumulates all of the hours that people dedicate to professional development and service to the organization, both at the state and local level. And that is how these awards are given each year. Normally, there would be a lovely evening event. There would be a dinner, usually with some music and an opportunity to get together with other people from our region. And in person, they would be presented the award by the WASB president, and there would be photographs. It really is a very nice event. This year it turned out they got their certificate and pin from me wearing a mask. A little anticlimactic given all of the service that they've accomplished. But I didn't want that to go without some acknowledgement because they're just way too humble. So on to my report. I do see that Ethan is with us this evening. What's happening since last we talked? I'll stop sharing. So if Ethan wants to grab the screen, you can get on and tell the board a little bit about the high school.
Okay, well, my name is Ethan Tellock. I'm a senior at Little Wolf High School. So far, since we last talked, I can't remember if we had, I believe we had homecoming and that had gone really well. This last month, we have been conducting a food drive through student council, and for some added incentives, added some Spirit Cup points towards the class with the most items donated. So I believe that will increase production from the food drive. And in the works, we have a possible, every year around Christmas time, we like to have a thing called Hallapalooza, which is just having some more time off of school to be together to embark in some fun activities, like Christmas movies and baking and some sort of tournaments in the gymnasium. So this year it might be a little more challenging, but I believe that it's still very doable. We can still hold some classic Christmas movies in teachers' classrooms, just with students sitting apart from each other. There are usually some sort of arts and crafts. I think that would definitely continue to be possible. I don't know what the art department looks like, but I'm very certain that it's nice and socially distanced, so it would still be safe. And as for a tournament of some sort, I'm not really sure what kind of tournament would be possible. I believe they were talking about some sort of a volleyball tournament or something with everybody masked and switching out volleyballs and sanitizing them and that things of that nature. But overall, school has been very good. I'm very glad that we haven't had to have any more virtual breaks. I realize that there will be one coming up here after Thanksgiving. So teachers are starting to get ready for that since we only have about a week and a half left. So yeah, that's kind of all that's really going on recently. I know that internet concerns may have been a little bit of an issue for some, but I believe that everybody's getting those things hammered out by now, and we can still have a productive school year going forward.
So at our last and first student council morning meeting, one of the topics, and I thought it was a really great one of the members had raised the question about handicap accessibility, particularly for our guests who use motorized wheelchairs and might need assistance with things such as the restroom. And we do now have those facilities available. And it was important to talk about because not even all the students have toured all the corners and cubbies of the new construction. But outside the fitness center, we do have the community changing areas. And those restrooms are oversized restrooms, complete with showers, toilet, sink, but they're spacious rooms that are handicap accessible that would enable a person in a motorized wheelchair who needs some added assistance in the restroom to be able to get that and maintain their privacy and dignity. So that was kind of an important conversation that we had, and there were offers made to different families if they wanted to come in and tour that space, so they would be familiar with it the next time they visit the facility for one of our events. So that was an interesting conversation. We talked a little bit about stress as well. How students are dealing with stress and the fact that we have to continue to work with social emotional learning and deal with that. Has anything new come out of that, Ethan?
Not really to my knowledge yet. I'm sure there are things in the works for that. I know that for some, the inconsistency with schooling and online and in person can be more of a struggle, and other people have important actions other than schooling going on in their lives that they have to balance as well. I am fortunate enough to have the good internet access and to be able to connect with teachers. And I do really trust all of our staff very much. I feel like I can come to them with anything. So I do think that, at least for me, the anxiety and stress has been to a minimum, but I understand for others have different activities going on in their own lives that may need some assistance. So I think, like I said before, the inconsistency might have some troubled. I think that going to school 100% in person would really help with some of that and give them more sense of a home feeling when they go to school, instead of having it be like a special event twice a week to go to school. But yeah, so far for me, it's been okay, but I can't speak for the entire student body since I'm only one of however many there are. So that's mostly what has been going on through that for the anxiety and stress issues.
So one of the things we haven't talked about, and we usually do when we have a student guest, is what are your plans after high school?
Well, so far I have applied and been accepted into UW Stevens Point, so I'm very happy with that. I chose Point because it's nice and close to home, and it had some sort of a nice homey feeling. I feel like I could feel at home and say, I could be able to say I'm going home and be going to my dorm in Stevens Point. So I did tour a couple other colleges, and they were all very nice schools, I thought, but I think Stevens Point gave me the best options. And so it's nice and close to home. A lot of my family has gone to Stevens Point, so I think that really helps as well. I'm thinking of going into some sort of business or accounting section. I really enjoy numbers and statistics, and I've heard that, or I know that accounting is a lot of dollar signs and decimal points and that kind of thing. So to prepare, I've been taking a college accounting class through UW Green Bay, and that's been going really well so far. It's only a semester course, but so far it's been going very well, and I'm hoping that I can get a head start by getting 3 or 4 credits towards the business side of schooling before I even get to the university. So those are mostly my plans so far. I know a lot of things can change. I know of a few people that thought they were going into one thing and then ended up completely different. I know Mr. Wolfgram was like that and switched his at some point in his career. So nothing's ever out the window, and I've tried not to close the door on any opportunities. But so far I think business and accounting would really suit me very well. And I've really been enjoying the accounting classes that I've been able to embark in. So yeah, those are mostly my plans. Hopefully they all work out as planned and I can be satisfied with everything, and I'm sure I will be.
It sounds like an excellent plan. Thank you for being with us again tonight, Ethan.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ethan.
I'm sorry, did any board members have questions for Ethan tonight?
I don't have a question, but I do thank you for your time spent with us. It's always a joy listening to you and what's going on at school and your personal endeavors as well. So thank you.
So as with the legislative update, our governor did do a state of the COVID pandemic and did issue a new executive order, just imploring everyone to do their very best to take precautions as we're coming up on the holiday season. I'll be talking a little bit about county endeavors along those same lines very shortly here. The Department of Public Instruction did submit its budget. Last week, Mrs. O'Brien and I had an opportunity to participate in an overview with the WASDA group to find out a little bit more about some of the focus points of that budget. The thinking going into the first year of the biennial budget is that they're trying to do some things to soften the blow, taking a look at enrollment numbers between 2019 and 2020, third Friday counts, and allowing districts to use the higher of the two numbers. They're considering something like that as well for summer school. Of course, those counts are a critical part of the formula that determines how much aid we're going to receive. Some of the other things that were examined were 2/3 funding for special education, building that incrementally over the next several years to get to the point of 2/3 funding. Of course, we know that special education is a huge portion of any annual budget. So getting a little relief in special ed funding allows us to do repurpose our own local funds to do other things. So we'll be watching. I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more in finance over the next couple of months as the legislators get back in session and we see some of those bills moving forward. Governor Evers is going to be here having a listening session on December 16th at 6 p.m. This would be the first of 4 virtual listening sessions with the idea of people being able to weigh in on how they believe the governor's budget should be allocated. With the election being complete, announcement of positions in the legislature have now occurred. Let's see. The Senate GOP was the only caucus to see significant changes, with Senator LeMahieu being elected majority leader and Chris Kapenga elected president. Senator Bewley and Representative Voss and Representative Hinz all retain their leadership positions. And I'm sure we'll be hearing a bit more about that as we move down the way. And Representative Nyagrin was reappointed to the Budget Committee as co-chair with Assembly Speaker Voss. So I think those are some of the things that would be of most interest to you in that department. We do have the monthly enrollment report. So let me get ready to share the screen again. And I don't know if you have any questions with regard to the report that's coming up here on your screen, but there is not much of a change from last month. Basically the difference of one person. With curriculum, this past month we took a look at the course of study guide. There were not many significant changes at this point, but that allows enrollment for the coming year for high school students, which is important. We want to start that before the first of the year. Coming down the pike, though, will be a district literacy plan, which will be a multi-year plan focusing on a curriculum audit, curriculum writing, and a materials adoption. And then the professional development that would correspond with the launch of a new curriculum. And then for math, we're meeting with some consultants to take a look at an adoption of new materials. So it's been quite a few years since big ideas and math expressions were explored. So taking a look at what's new and available out there and making a choice about where we want to go for the future. So we'll see some new proposals with that coming in the spring of the year as we present the new budget. In terms of COVID, the Department of Health from Wapaka County, along with all of the superintendents, has a new correspondence slated to go out later this week. We'll all be sending it out simultaneously. Just again, reminding everyone about community spread and the importance of doing what we can to help one another out. Numbers within the district have been very good. Our incidence rate has decreased recently and stabilized. We're able to do staffing very well at this point. So we definitely want to maintain that. In addition to that correspondence, there are some additional resources that would go out as well, all from the county and with the support of Mr. Wout from Wapaka County Department of Health. So I'll pause there and see if you have any other questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Robert.
You're welcome.
All right, school operations report. Are there any questions for Ms. Brower or Mr. Wolfgram about the report? Any comments from either of you?
I don't have any.
Go.
All right, thank you. Business related reports. Are there any questions for Mrs. O'Brien about her report? Mrs. O'Brien, any comment?
I have none.
Thank you. Director's reports. Any questions for Mr. Covarrubias about his report? Any comment, Mr. Covarrubias?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any board members have any comments to share publicly? I will take that as a no. Committee reports. Any questions for any committee chairs or any comment from any committee chairs? On to unfinished business. Item A, consider approval of Neola Policy Updates Volume 29, Number 2, excluding Policy 3231 and Policy 8450.01 as presented. Looking for a motion.
Bruce Scheller, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the Neola Policy Updates, Volume 29, Number 2, excluding Policy 3231 and Policy 8450.01 as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Scheller. Do I have a second?
Russ Johnson, I'll second that.
Mrs. Pecky, second.
I will get Mr. Johnson for that second. He's the first I heard. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we will proceed by a roll call vote. Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mr. Holman,
Aye.
Mr. Forbes,
Aye.
Mrs. Petke,
Aye.
Mr. Scheller,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
It is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by roll call vote. Item B, consider approval of policy 3231, outside activity staff as presented.
Russ Johnson, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve policy 3231, outside activities of staff as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Pecky, second.
Second by Mr. Petke. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Ms. Holman,
Aye.
Mr. Forbes,
Aye.
Mrs. Petke,
Aye.
Mr. Scheller,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
It is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by roll call vote. Item C, consider approval of policy 8450.01, personal protective equipment during pandemic epidemic.
Mrs. Petke, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve policy 450.01, personal protective equipment during pandemic epidemic events as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Petke. Do I have a second?
Russ Johnson, I'll second.
Second.
I'll actually take Mr. Forbes. I heard him first. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mr. Holman,
Aye.
Mr. Forbes,
Aye.
Mrs. Petke, Mr.
Aye.
Scheller,
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson, and it is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by roll call vote. 19A, new business, consider approval of resolution for school year 2021, number 13, authorizing a taxable tax and revenue anticipation promissory note for cash flow purposes in an amount not to exceed $1 million.
Bruce Schaller. I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve resolution school year 2020-2021, number 13, authorizing a taxable tax and revenue anticipation promissory note for cash flow purposes in an amount not to exceed $1 million.
I have a motion by Mr. Scheller. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Pecky, second.
I have a second by Mrs. Petke. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mr. Holman,
Aye.
Mr. Forbes,
Aye.
Mrs. Petke,
Aye.
Mr. Scheller,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
and is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by roll call vote. Item B, consider approval of the Little Wolf High School 21-22 course of study guide.
Russ Johnson, I move that the Manawa Board of Education approve the Little Wolf High School 2021-22 course of study guide.
I have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second?
Russ Hoban, I second that.
Second by Mr. Holman. Any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Seeger. I think we just lost Mr. Seeger from the meeting. Mr.
Aye.
Holman? Mr. Forbes?
Aye.
Mrs. Petke? Aye. Mr. Scheller?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
It is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by a roll call vote. Mr. Seeger dropped off of the meeting. Item C, consider approval of investments for OPEB account.
Mrs. Pecky, I move that the Manawa Board of Education approve investments for the other post-employment benefits accounts as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Petke. Do I have a second?
Russ Hoban, I second that.
Second by Mr. Holman. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Once again, we will proceed by a roll call vote. It appears that Mr. Seeger is still off. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Mr. Forbes?
Aye.
Mrs. Petke?
Aye.
Mr. Scheller?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
It is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by roll call vote. Mr. Seeger absent. Item D, consider endorsement of administrative job descriptions as presented.
Stan Forbes, I move that the Manawa Board of Education approve the administrative job descriptions for the Dean of Students, Secondary Principal, and Elementary Principal Special Education Director as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Forbes. Do I have a second?
Russ Johnson, I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Mr. Forbes?
Aye.
Mrs. Petke?
Aye.
Mr. Scheller?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
And it is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries. Seeger absent. Item E, consider approval of the Winter Athletics Fans in the Stands plan as presented.
Bruce
And you
Scheller.
have to pick
I
an
move that the
option.
Manawa Board of... What was that?
You will have to pick an option in your motion.
Yep. I move that the Manawa Board of Education approve the Winter Athletics Fans in the Stands plan option in A as presented.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Scheller for Plan A. Do I have a second?
Russ Johnson, I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Discussion?
We have Dan
Can you
give us
go over
more
what Plan
information
A
on.
was?
Yep.
Sorry, Stan Forbes.
Mr. Wolfgram, if you'd speak, please, on it.
So what was the question regarding the option?
What was Plan A?
Plan A, home fans only, and B is home fans and away fans.
Because I see when you look at it, for the only home fans, looks like the CWC small conference kind of is leaned towards the no away fans in our old regular conference. CWC large, most of them seem as though they are having fans. So I don't know. At this time, we can always change it, can't we? I mean, a month from now or something, we can.
I'm sure that's certainly within your purview to be able to change it. You can see that the no away fans does lead versus having away fans within the 21 school conference. And Wisconsin Valley Lutheran was yet to make a decision on it. And Pittsville is definitely staying with their reciprocity agreement.
And just maybe as well to point out, as Dr. Opper had noted yesterday in her weekly update, Mr. Wolt did suggest
I keep getting
that
kicked
we
off,
can
so
take-
I apologize if you guys already answered.
No problem. They have a motion on the floor right now to accept option A for home fans only, and they're at the discussion point right now.
So yesterday in Dr. Opper's weekly update, she did make note that Mr. Wolt from Wapaka County DHS did note
I think the last time
he
we
would not.
questioned just having.
Can't do.
I think we're experiencing a bit of a sound delay, so not everyone is able to hear one another in a timely fashion. It might be causing a bit of confusion, but President Johnson, I think you started to say something.
I did. I was just going to note that in your weekly update last night, Dr. Opper, that Mr. Wolt of Wapaka County DHS did indicate that he would not endorse anything other than only home fans. Just to make mention of that. And we have lost Mr. Seeger again. So maybe if we want to wait a moment for Mr. Seeger to rejoin us, I would anticipate he'd be back on momentarily.
Did we have a second on this motion yet?
Yes, it was seconded by Mr. Johnson, hence why we're having discussion.
Great, thank you.
All right, and Mr. Seeger is back on now. So Mr. Seeger, if you would like to proceed with what you were saying.
I was just questioning last time we got together, or last week or whatever, we talked about senior away fans only. Did we get anywhere with that at all, or did you guys already talk about that one? No, I was off for it.
So we did not talk about a separate proposal for seniors, but maybe Mr. Wolfgram can speak to that more.
Can you reiterate the question, President Johnson, as far as questions for seniors being able to get to? Was that the question?
I believe Mr. Seeger's question was last time we had talked about allocating tickets for away fans for seniors. And I don't
Sure.
believe that
And-
was necessarily directly incorporated into this, but it sort of is.
No, and we certainly are allowing in option B away fans 2 tickets, which certainly would include senior parents. And during the athletic director meeting and the principals meeting, there really wasn't any other school that was going the route of having seniors only. They were either going, we're allowing just home fans, or we are going to allow 2 from home and 2 from away for everyone. So that didn't seem to be a thing in the CWSC, and we tried to stay consistent as much as we could, because that's the one thing that the principals spoke about, was trying to have some sense of consistency across the conference. Pittsville's really the outlier with the reciprocity. So it was either all in or out as far as fans were concerned for home and away. And this is an equitable distribution. He didn't like what I said, so he left.
I think he's having some horrific technical difficulties. He was very, very spotty when he rejoined. Is there any
Well,
additional?
maybe the possibility exists he could phone in using the PIN number.
I was going to just suggest that a phone to supplement his video might be a good choice, so that at least he can hear the conversation consistently.
Right, right.
If we see him.
Any additional?
Third time is charm time.
I'll try to
Any
message
additional discussion? Otherwise, we can wait. We can wait and see if he's able to rejoin us before continuing.
Yeah. Bruce Scheller, I was wondering what is meant by the reciprocity for Pittsville?
Reciprocity basically is saying that whatever your school's policy is, that's what we're going to follow. So if you don't allow away fans, then we're not going to allow you to come to our school.
All right. Yes, that's
All right. Did you
when I brought that up.
get any explanation before, Luke?
What's that?
Were you able to get any of the explanation before when Mr. Wolfgram talked about it?
No, I'm like so hit and miss right now. I don't know what's going on. I have perfect signal. I just switched to a different internet now. So
Try dialing in by telephone and then just muting your computer.
what's that? I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Would you want to try dialing in using your cell phone or your landline if you have one, and then just muting your computer? You might be able to hear more consistently then.
Okay, I can hear now. If it goes bad again, I'll try from phone.
Okay, Dan, talk fast.
Okay, the reason that we didn't do senior option is because consistency across the district. No other school was doing senior parents. They either were allowing all home fans or they were doing 2 home fans and 2 away fans. So we're trying to stay consistent.
Yep, and that's fine. I was just seeing if we got anywhere with that at all. So, thank you.
You bet.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none then, a motion would be for Plan A. And we'll do by roll call vote. Mr. Seeger.
Aye.
Mr. Holman.
Aye.
Mr. Forbes.
Aye.
Mrs. Petke.
Aye.
Mr. Scheller.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Sorry,
we lose
I,
Mr. Johnson?
sorry, I had my, I
And it-
muted.
It is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by a roll call vote. Item F, consider approval of concerts, performances, fans in the stand plan as presented.
Russ Holman, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the concerts / performances, fans in the stands plan as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Holman. Do I have a second?
Luke Seeger, I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Seeger. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mr. Holman,
Aye.
Mr. Forbes,
Aye.
Mrs. Petke,
Aye.
Mr. Scheller,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
and it is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by a roll call vote. Item G, consider approval of postponing the middle school Washington, D.C. trip as presented.
Bruce Scheller, I move as the Manawha Board of Education approve postponing the Manawha Middle School Washington DC field trip as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Scheller. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Pecky, second.
Second by Mrs. Petke. Any discussion?
No, on this, they were gonna, just still hoping to do it, but they're gonna lose like 3 years of kids are gonna go at once or something like that.
Yes,
I think we were just going to rotate.
the plan is they're going to take 3 grades next year, and then they would take a year off and then go back to their traditional rotation.
So what happens if next year in May they are not able to go?
That's a different memo.
What I'm thinking about is those parents that have paid or payments are due. What happens if there comes a point in time where there is no trip?
You know, I think we can only go day by day, week by week, and year by year. I know that we are not, by putting it towards next year, the families are not in any jeopardy of losing money. Mr. Bortle has made sure of that. So I don't think there's any risk in us with this proposal at this time. And then obviously in the spring, we'll have more information and hopefully a vaccine to be able to make a sound judgment at that time. So I don't even know if I want to speculate the what if another year from now, because a month from now, I don't know what this is going to look like. So I'd be hesitant to speculate.
Could you?
I was looking for the risk financially. That was all. So.
Okay.
Could you have Mr. Bortle look into the cancellation policy if the trip, rather than being postponed, at some point was canceled, or a family changed their mind and they had made payments but now had reversed their decision and no longer wish to go? What would happen? How would those things be handled? Because that's a possibility.
Oh, I'm sure. And I'm sure these families want additional reassurances. So absolutely. Yeah, I'll talk with Mr. Bortle and we will report back.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Mr. Seeger?
Aye.
Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Mr. Forbes?
Aye.
Mrs. Petke?
Aye.
Mr. Scheller?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
And it is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by a roll call vote. Item H, consider approval of revised administratively approved leave language for COVID-19 specific voluntary unpaid support staff leaves as
Mrs. Petke, I move that the Manual Board of Education approve the revised administratively approved leave language for COVID-19 specific voluntary unpaid support staff leave as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Petke. Do I have a second?
Russ Holman, I second it.
Second by Mr. Holman. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mr. Holman,
Aye.
Mr. Forbes,
Aye.
Mrs. Petke,
Aye.
Mr. Scheller,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
and it is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries. Item I, first reading of Neola Policy 8550, competitive food sales. Do any board members have any feedback on this proposed policy? All right, it will then be up for approval at the December regular Board of Education meeting. Next meeting dates, tomorrow, November 17th, Buildings and Grounds at 5:30, December 7th, Finance at 6, December 8th, Curriculum at 5, December 9th, Policy and Human Resources at 6, and December 21st is our regular board meeting at 7 p.m. I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
Russ Holman, I make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Holman. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Petke, second.
Russ Johnson.
Mrs. Petke beat you to it. Mr. Johnson, I'll take her motion. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mr. Holman,
Aye.
Mr. Forbes,
Aye.
Mrs. Petke,
Aye.
Mr. Scheller,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson, Mr. Johnson,
Aye. I didn't hear you say my name.
that's okay. It's an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion to adjourn carries by roll call vote at 8:26 p.m. Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good
Good night.
night.
Have a good night.